Admiral Constantine.
Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Grand Admiral?
The Emperor recently promoted me after my victory at Batuu.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Keegs, and today I want to go over Thrawn, who I think is going to be just as important in the upcoming Star Wars universe as Ezra, like I did in my last People of Star Wars Explained video. So we're going to go over a brief history of Thrawn so everyone can feel caught up when the Ahsoka series releases, which I think will probably be the first series where we see Thrawn again. Perhaps The Mandalorian Season 3, depending on when they all release. Thrawn is a Chiss male born in the Chiss Ascendancy on the planet Rentor to the Kivu family. His original name was Mitth'raw'nuruodo, or Vuron for short. The Kivu were a low-ranking poor family, which is where Thrawn was until General Batuu and the patriarch of the Myth family, Tharaki, adopted Thrawn into the Myth family, skyrocketing him in rank. One of the biggest things about Thrawn, though, is that he can infer incredible knowledge about people just from their artwork, and he uses that to his tactical advantage throughout his entire life.
The use of this specific color, the angle of the line, this is the work of the rebel Sabine Wren. I believe this helmet belongs to her compatriot, the young Jedi, and I escaped prisoner, Ezra Bridger.
To understand Thrawn, though, you kind of need to know a little bit of background about the Chiss Ascendancy. Essentially, there are 9 ruling families, and then there are 40 great families, and then there are a boatload of lesser families that really don't have much pull or status in the government. The 9 families make up the Syndicure, which is basically the central government in the Chiss Ascendancy. Within each family, there are then 5 ranks that you could possibly be, starting with Merit Adoptive as the lowest, and then Trialborn, Ranking Distant, Cousin, and then Blood being the elite of the family. The Chiss homeworld on Csilla is in what they call the Chaos, which is basically just unknown space in the Star Wars universe, and there was a lot of black holes and supernova happening around there, which made navigating it extremely difficult, and that's why the Republic or the Empire doesn't really venture too far into the unknown regions and haven't mapped it out completely. Outside the families, though, stood the Chiss Expansionary Defense Fleet, where the families were not supposed to have any influence or sway over what happens in the military, though they often did, and those lines kind of blurred together here or there. One of the also really important things to note in the military here in the Chiss Ascendancy is that you're not allowed to preemptively attack anyone, meaning you can't attack anyone until they attack you first, which is going to come into play a few times here throughout Thrawn's history. Anyways, getting back to Thrawn now, though, when he was taken into the Myth family, he was given the name Mitth'raw'nuruodo, or Thrawn for short. In the family replacement ceremony, though, he would meet a man named Thras, who he would end up impressing by his knowledge of art and how he was able to infer very detailed things about the people that did it just from how their art styles are, and this man would go on to become a much bigger friend to Thrawn in the future. The Myth would make him a cadet in Tarim Academy, where he would quickly rise through the ranks, and so fast, even on occasion, he was accused of cheating. On one particular occasion, when he was accused of cheating, a girl named Zyara came to his defense and said, hey, there's no way he could have been cheating on that test. I was the one that proctored it. I watched him the whole time. There was no cheating. And her standing up for him was a huge deal because this girl was part of the Arizi family, which was a giant enemy of the Myth and probably their biggest nemesis. So one of them vouching for a Myth family member was a huge deal. On Thrawn's first mission to space, he encountered a Skywalker. Skywalkers in the Chiss Ascendancy are generally girls between the ages of 7 and 14 who possess Third Sight, which is basically just a force ability that allows them to navigate ships very, very well, and it's a top secret of the Chiss Ascendancy that these girls even exist. But when he would encounter this girl, she was kind of having a very young life crisis about what she's going to do now that she's kind of approaching the age of being of no use as a Skywalker, because she was going to be over the age limit and losing her powers, essentially. So Thrawn basically just told her that her future is hers to decide, and, you know, you got to make life what you can. And that honestly comforted the girl incredibly. 2 years after joining the academy, Thrawn graduated as a lieutenant. He would go to meet his old friend Thras, which had actually just been a plot by the Myth and Stybla family to actually test to see whether or not they had become friends, which at that point they actually had. Both of these families realized how unique of people these guys were and how powerful of an alliance they would be because of Thras's political genius and Thrawn's military one. When Thrawn was a junior commander, he would meet a navigator named Kalori, and they would hunt down some pirates together. General Batuu would tell Thrawn, or at least remind him of Ascendancy policies of no preemptive strikes, which Thrawn kind of said that he would abide to. Thrawn would bait the pirates into attacking him, but as soon as they finally did, Mid-Captain Ziara showed up and just kind of blew them away. Kalori said he never wanted to see Thrawn again because he thought that Thrawn was going to get him killed, and he was kind of crazy, which is probably a little true, but Thrawn just thought the navigator was so interesting and said, you know what, next time I'm going out, I'm hiring you specifically. Batuu would promote Thrawn 2 ranks, which was basically unheard of, to senior captain, and he would also make Ziara a senior captain as well. And then Thrawn would end up serving as 4th officer on Ziara's ship. On Ziara's ship, Thrawn would encode a message that ended up helping one of the alien species win a battle. That was strictly against Ascendancy protocol, though Rosku, the 1st officer on Ziara's ship, couldn't prove it. She did file a complaint, and she also brought it to the attention of the Klar family, and that was really her big mistake. Because they elevated it to the family level instead of just the military one, Batuu was able to bring it to the Myth family, who has much more sway and pull over these things, and was kind of able to sweep it under the rug. Rosku was not really happy with that, though there wasn't a lot she could do, though later in her career she would commit some small minor infraction as well, but nobody would come to her aid, and she would get booted out of the Expansionary Defense Fleet, and because of all that, she just kind of held a huge grudge for Thrawn from there on. A syndic in the Myth family named Thurfian, though, did believe Rosku and thought that Thrawn was kind of a loose cannon and a liability to the Myth family, so he ended up tasking Senior Aide Thras to go find some dirt on Thrawn. Of course, we know now that Thras and Thrawn were good friends, and though Thras didn't lie, he generally painted a glowing review of Thrawn, because he didn't find anything specifically, or he found enough reasonable doubt to be like, well, there's possibility that Thrawn didn't do this, and he painted it in a way that made Thrawn look extra innocent. Thrawn may be a master of the military, but he is terrible in the political realm, which is a big factor in Thrawn's history and his judgment calls. So much so that on his first command ship of the Boko, I believe it was called, he got that ship taken away from him for a judgment call where he ended up saving a bunch of people, but how he did it was in a way outside of his jurisdiction, so it upset the government and the Syndicate a lot, so they ended up demoting him. Ziara was pretty upset when this happened, so in kind of a defiance act, she showed Thrawn the homeworld Csilla, because nobody really lives there anymore, though supposedly 8 billion people live on this planet, but when she gets there, she shows him the deep dark secret that there are really only 70 million or so, which is just way fewer than they actually tell people there are, and they do this for a couple reasons, one of which being so that if anybody attacks Csilla, then they think they're attacking this like great homeworld of the Chiss, but there's really not that many people there. But regardless, it's still a huge secret and something very big to learn. Ziara tells Thrawn that the reason there's so few is because a lot of them fled the planet thousands of years ago when the star was significantly weakened from some cataclysmic event. A few weeks later, Zistalmu, a syndic of the Arizi family, offers Thrawn a position in the Arizi family of the rank Trialborn, which is actually a huge step up from Merit Adoptive. And the Arizi are also one of the 9 ruling families and very powerful, so this would have actually been a pretty big step up, though Thrawn is going to decline that for now. His political blindness later, though, would get him demoted, but at the same time, they would then put him in command of the heavy cruiser, the Springhawk. He goes on to help the Stybla family recover a relic, where he learns of a weapon called Star Flash that the Chiss used thousands of years ago. Now, this was an alien technology to the Chiss, but they used it to kind of kill a bunch of invading people. The problem with this is they won the war, but their entire homeworld pretty much had to flee or go underground, hence why everybody is not on the surface anymore of Csilla. The other big problem is it kills everybody aboard the crew that pilots it, and also weakens the star significantly, and pretty much permanently hurts the star, which is why their own star has been weakened so much. And over the thousands of years, this has kind of gotten lost to the past, but the Stybla are still protecting the one other star flash relic that they have. The Stybla family say that back thousands of years ago, when they needed a family to pilot the weapon, the Myth family volunteered, and 4 very high-ranking Myth members died, and that's why the Stybla and Myth have such a strong connection and why they are such strong alliances, even though not many of the members recognize it now. The Stybla family was very honored that Thrawn helped them recover this weapon that was very powerful, obviously, and they gave him the suffix on his name Odo, which was a giant honor, and his new name became Mitth'raw'nuruodo. Thras then proclaimed Thrawn as his brother, which is huge because Thras was a cousin of the family, and him proclaiming Thrawn to be a brother was really kind of saying like, hey, this guy, even though he's a Merit adoptive, if I'm calling him my brother as a cousin, then he kind of has a way higher rank than Merit adoptive would let you believe. Thrawn would later tell Thras that he believes that at one point in his life he had a sister, but he doesn't know where she went, and she either died or left when he was very young. Thras tells Thrawn that he's going to help locate his sister, but unfortunately after this meeting, Thras would go on to die trying to actually save some aliens. Eventually, the once Skywalker Thalius would go aboard Thrawn's ship and become the caretaker of the new Skywalker, Cheery. This is very unusual because Skywalkers generally, once they're done with their tour, or whatever you call it, never want anything to do with the ship again, but Thalius really wanted to meet Thrawn again, so she joins the ship. Her and Cheery both go on to help Thrawn greatly throughout his time in the Chiss Ascendancy. On one such mission, Thrawn would take Cheery to go meet the leader of the Pakash, and his name was Wingali. And Wingali would end up giving Thrawn a ring, and on this ring was 2 interweaving snakes, which would then go on to become Thrawn's personal symbol later in life. Thrawn would begin investigating a General Yiv who was trying to take down the Chiss Ascendancy, and in Thrawn's attempts to neutralize him, he would gain a lot of political enemies, namely Thurfian of the Myth family and Zistalmu of the Orizi, who would then start to plot and conspire to take Thrawn down. Thrawn would then go on an unauthorized mission to retrieve a gravity well generator, and on this mission he would encounter Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, who was on a mission to save Padme. Through this, he would help save Padme and learn of the Republic in general. Thrawn would go back to outsmart Yiv and end up taking him down, but a new enemy would emerge in Jixtus. Now, Jixtus was a Grisk man who has been plotting and sowing mistrust among the Chiss for just years and years and years, trying to take them down slowly without anybody knowing who they are. Throughout the many encounters with Jixtus, Cheery the Skywalker would go on to have many Force visions and do a lot of other Force-related things that were clearly outside of what a Skywalker should be able to do, and it was very clear in these few years that the Force was affecting Cheery in ways that no other Skywalker had the ability to do. Thrawn was able to defeat Jixtus, but in the end, Jixtus revealed that the Grisk as a whole, as a species, were plotting to take down the Chiss, and that they'll never stand a chance for anything that they do. The thing is, Jixtus would then blow up his ship among all of his other ships as well, and they would all kind of self-explode in order to not let the Chiss know what a Grisk looks like, which basically means that there are probably many Grisks hiding in plain sight in the Chiss Ascendancy, just waiting and plotting to take them down just right under their nose. Unfortunately, in the process of taking down Jixtus, Thrawn would have to have used a preemptive strike, which then gave Thurfian, who is now a patriarch of the Myth family, enough leverage to expel Thrawn from the Expansionary Defense Fleet and actually exile him. Secretly, though, Thrawn and Supreme General Bakif had been conspiring a little bit themselves, and they figured that they would let the Syndicure do this little act just so that they can feel better about themselves, but secretly Thrawn would be going on a mission, because they had heard about this new thing in the chaos called the Galactic Empire, and Thrawn's mission was to go ally with them and see if that they would be potential allies to help take down the Grisks. It's important to note that during the battle with Jixus as well, Thrawn had mentioned that even though he didn't need to use Starflash to defeat Jixus, if he thought that was the only way to save the Chiss people, he would have done it, which would have essentially meant sacrificing all of the people of that world. And that just kind of gives you a very good insight as to where Thrawn's head's at. He is 100% I will sacrifice anyone and everyone to save the Chiss people if that's what I have to do. Caretaker Thalius would end up taking Cheery to Borica, who was in charge of a program that ended up assimilating Skywalkers into their new roles as Skywalkers by basically brainwashing them and like taking away all of their memories of their parents and everyone. Thales wasn't very happy about this, but we also did learn that this person, Borica, is actually Thrawn's sister. Thras had actually ended up being able to track down his long-lost sister, Borica, who we know was a Skywalker, and that's why she was taken away at such a young age. Thras wasn't able to give it to Thrawn, but in a roundabout way, it ended up getting to Thalius. And now Thalius and Cheery are going to be kind of training with Borica in that sense, though Thrawn does not know yet that his sister is alive and well. In Exile, Thrawn would set up a bunch of lures to attract the Empire. When a ship finally showed up, he would then sneak aboard the ship and meet the captain of the ship, who would take him to Coruscant. His plan was originally to meet with Anakin Skywalker or any official in the Empire, and then kind of seek out whoever could make a deal with him. He thought he'd be gone no longer than about a year, which is kind of funny because we definitely know that that is not going to happen. A cadet named Eli Vanto recognized Thrawn as Chiss, and this really intrigued Thrawn because he kind of wondered what the outside world knew of, or at least thought they knew of, the Chiss people. Eli Vanto would then act as Thrawn's translator and teacher of the language Basic until they met Emperor Palpatine, which he wasn't really happy to do at first. When he met Palpatine, he offered knowledge of the unknown region in exchange for help with the Grisk threat, though Palpatine saw even more in Thrawn and offered him a position in the Imperial military, which he did end up accepting. Thrawn requested, though, that Eli would act as his translator and teacher still while he was at school, which Palpatine granted. He would spend 3 months in the Imperial Royal Academy, which is the highest ranking academy that there is and most prestigious, where he would then graduate with a lieutenant's rank. For the next couple years, he was assigned as the second officer aboard the Bloodcrow ship under the captain of Rick Vergolo. He would be promoted to first officer very quickly, and he would also gain Eli as his aide, which was generally very unusual for a lieutenant to have an aide, but Palpatine made the exception and allowed Eli to travel with him. That captain would go on to leave, though, and was replaced with a Captain Rossi, who really didn't like Thrawn because she was basically just racist, not just against the Chiss, but against any alien, and she didn't think that they should be in the military. This led to a lot of confrontation between Thrawn and military command, where he would occasionally get in trouble. He would eventually be promoted to captain, though, and serve as first officer on the Thunder Wasp. He would go on a mission to subdue a rebellion on Umbara, and on this mission, the then Captain Alfred Cheno, he deemed himself unfit for duty and would promptly take over command, seize control, and win the day. Admiral Genling was furious at this and would essentially force Cheno into a early retirement. He also tried to punish Thrawn, but Cheno was able to step in and kind of shield Thrawn, taking the brunt of his anger. And he really did this because he saw how Thrawn commanded the ship and had a high respect for Thrawn and wanted him to succeed. Thrawn was then promoted by Grand Moff Tarkin to captain, where he would do a year as captain on the Thunder Wasp. After a few more missions though, Thrawn did his thing of accomplishing missions while pissing off a lot of Imperial command, and they would try to court-martial him and get him removed. In fact, what had actually happened though was he ends up getting promoted, and after that promotion he is given the Imperial Star Destroyer of the Chimera. As a Commodore now, Thrawn was making a few more political friends, and when I say a few, like maybe one more friend, he met this person named Arienda Price. I don't know if I said that right. It's a lot of consonants in there. I'm not really sure how they play together, but Price was the governor of Lothal at this point, and she was able to help get Eli promoted, which Thrawn was very thankful for because Thrawn had actually secretly been making Eli his protege, teaching him a lot of things, and Eli's respect for Thrawn has greatly grown over the years serving with him. Thrawn and Eli would continue to go on missions, and on one of these missions they encountered a bunch of Wookiee slaves. Now this is an interesting one because Eli expressed his discomfort at having slaves, and Thrawn, though wasn't super happy about it, he did say that basically this is an Imperial asset and they are to be treated as such, which to him does mean respectfully, but he also agrees that if they're Imperial assets that they should be treated as assets and not given away and used to their fullest extent. Thrawn also believed that the Empire was working on some sort of very large-scale project, which he found foolish because he thought those resources could be used elsewhere, and instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, you should spread the wealth a little bit. Thrawn would put down a rebellion on Batuu, where he would then be promoted again to Admiral. And on one, I want to call it a mission, but essentially there was a fleet admiral that had tasked him and a bunch of other people to help him rescue a bunch of Imperial hostages in this certain way, but Thrawn believed that that plan was going to fail regardless of what happened, so he declined to assist. Now this made Imperial command very angry, but Thrawn wasn't exactly worried, and that's just always kind of Thrawn's style of being very cool, calm, and collected. He watched as that fleet commander failed, and as they did, he found the real culprit and went after them instead. He ended up meeting the leader of this rebellion group, who called himself Night Swan. He ended up actually really liking Night Swan and thought that this guy would make a great asset to the Empire or to the Chiss Ascendancy, which he would offer a job to, or say some kind of help at all, but Night Swan would decline on principle, and this kind of made Thrawn a little bit sad. Thrawn told Night Swan, though, that he's really with the Empire because he believes that the chaos needs some sort of structure, and he believes without a central government or an overarching government that it would all fall into chaos, and he just doesn't believe that a system in chaos would be able to stand up to the likes of someone like the Grisks, which he knows is a huge threat from the unknown regions that the Empire is not very well aware of at the moment. When Thrawn went back to command the battle and destroy these insurgents, Governor Rice was down on the planet and ended up killing another Imperial officer and then causing a big explosion to cover her tracks. Now Thrawn couldn't prove it was Price, but he pretty much knew it, and he was very unhappy because he felt it was completely unnecessary to have all these people killed, and if there's one thing Thrawn does not like, it is wasting assets. He was considering turning her in or what evidence he had, but Price made him an offer that essentially he couldn't refuse. She used her connections to make him a fleet admiral of the 7th Fleet, and in turn he would also help her with putting down a rebellion on Lothal. Thrawn would leave and go back to Coruscant, where Palpatine would promote him to Grand Admiral Thrawn. Here he confronted Palpatine about the secret project he believed he was working on, where he would find out about the Death Star. Now, Thrawn thought that this was a waste of resources and could be used elsewhere, but not only that, he believed that he was a little scared that this weapon would be used against the Chiss people, though Palpatine assured him that it wasn't, because Palpatine's word is rock solid, right? Thrawn has been helping Palpatine build these maps of the unknown regions, though, and Palpatine would mention that he knows Thrawn has left off the Chiss worlds and bases, and that's fine, and he can't even use these against the Chiss if he wanted to. Just then, Vader walked in, and this was really the first introduction between Vader and Thrawn. Later, though, Thrawn would send Eli to go meet Ar'alani, who was now an admiral herself at the time, and he would ask Eli if he would join the Chiss Ascendancy and help those people out, because he believed that Eli had taken enough mentorship by now from Thrawn that he would be capable of helping out the Chiss Ascendancy. So he would send them away, and essentially he would leave for Lothal. On Lothal, he would meet the rebel cell known as the Phoenix Squadron. He would also set up the TIE Defender program with enhanced TIE fighter capabilities, believing a more agile military would prove to be significantly more useful than a single weapon such as the Death Star. Thrawn would constantly battle with the rebels, not just on Lothal, but also on planets such as Ryloth, home of the Twi'leks, against Cham Syndulla and his daughter Hera. Thrawn would learn that there's a mole within his ship and set a trap to catch him. He figured out that it was Agent Kallus and would use Kallus to lead him to the rest of the rebellion. Thrawn's plan indirectly worked, and he was able to locate the rebels and plan a full assault, to which he would have succeeded, except for the fact that one of the Imperial admirals disobeyed his orders, and Commander Sato of the rebellion sacrificed his life to give Jedi Padawan Ezra Bridger a chance to escape and find reinforcements, which led to the rest of the rebels also escaping. Palpatine was not happy with that at all, and he ended up sending Thrawn and Vader to the planet Batuu to investigate a disturbance in the Force. Coincidentally, this was the same planet that Anakin Skywalker and Thrawn met all those years ago, and I think it was probably known to Palpatine that Anakin met Thrawn there and sent them there purposely to kind of figure out their shit together. Thrawn gave many hints that he believed that Vader was actually secretly Anakin Skywalker, though obviously Vader denied them all. They end up encountering some Grisks who have stolen some Skywalkers and are using them to try to navigate them through, just like the Chiss do. Thrawn ends up recovering these little girls and giving them back to Ar'alani, and they go their separate ways. They realize that this means that the Grisk have infiltrated at least one faction in the Chiss Ascendancy, and if it hasn't already, this means civil war is going to start any time now in the Chiss Ascendancy. So they are not looking too good with Thrawn's absence. During the mission on Batuu, though, Vader actually had a chance to fly one of the TIE Defenders, and with that, he actually loved it. He thought that there could be a few improvements here or there, but overall, he gave a glowing endorsement to Palpatine to further fund these. A central theme between Vader and Thrawn, though, is that Vader really believes that Thrawn is not solely loyal to the Empire and still is loyal to the Chiss Ascendancy, which is actually true. Thrawn is loyal to the Chiss Ascendancy, and we know that he puts the Chiss Ascendancy above all, even the Empire. But Thrawn always tells Vader and everyone else that it doesn't have to be one or the other, and that he can be loyal to both and protect both and do what's in the best interest for both of them. They don't really believe that, and Palpatine knows that Thrawn's not loyal to just the Empire, which doesn't make him very happy, and it pisses the hell out of Vader. But Palpatine knows that Thrawn is so valuable, one of his most valuable assets, that he's not going to get rid of him for a reason like that. Thrawn would return to Lothal and have many more confrontations with the rebels, though at one point Tarkin would give him a call and say that Krennic was trying to divert more funds into the Death Star and take them away from Thrawn's TIE Defender program. Tarkin told Thrawn that he was able to set up a meeting with Palpatine and he would be able to plead his case there, and Thrawn decided that that meeting and having these TIE Defenders was way more important than the rebels, so he actually left Lothal and put Price in charge. At the meeting, though, Tarkin and Palpatine would agree that if Thrawn could accomplish a mission to destroy some Grolix that were interfering with the Death Star program, and if he could do it in a week, they would restore his funding. Thrawn actually failed on a technicality. But afterwards, he ended up suggesting that Vader should really be the one to pilot the Death Star and not Krennic, which Tarkin agrees to and really pisses off Krennic. Thrawn returned to Lothal to see that it was under siege by the rebellion, and while Thrawn was able to take control of the situation for a short time, the Jedi Ezra Bridger did something that he could have never predicted. He called in dozens of Purrgil to smash through Thrawn's barricade and take both him and Ezra into hyperspace, where the two of them would disappear for the next decade. By the time of The Mandalorian, we know that Ahsoka is searching for Thrawn, and we know that Magistrate Morgan Elsbeth was someone that calls Thrawn a master, so who that could be, I'm not really sure. I assume that she's like his new protege or something. And we can probably assume that Ezra and Thrawn had to work together to get out of whatever situation they were in, and it's likely that Ezra and Thrawn are actually working together now. There's also been some speculation that Thrawn's actually on Mandalore or has something to do significantly with The Mandalorian, and we can expect to possibly see him in the next season of The Mandalorian. That's pretty much going to wrap up where we are with Thrawn and his entire history up until this point. I know this was another long video, but Thrawn is such a complex character that it's really hard to simplify him in such a short video, but I hope you were still able to enjoy this and learn something new. But until next time, I'm Keegs, and I will catch you all next time for some more Star Wars content.
I do not require glory, only results for my Emperor.